Hi, everybody. It is Kathy, and I love to be selling. Come on in, sellers. I have a hot, hot tip. This is one that I have never seen eBay seller guru share, and I'm going to share it with you. It is the number one tip. I don't see them sharing. I'm not sure why, because it's a great tip, maybe because they don't want you to know. But it's one to really keep in mind, particularly when you're listening to tips on how to source inventory, tips on hot selling inventory, also tips on business practices. So I'm going to be sharing the number one tip, the top tip that I don't see eBay sales gurus sharing. And where it circles around, hi, Vicki, is grow where you're planted. A lot of times I'll see people sharing tips. I see people asking for tips. And I remember doing this myself. Hi, Sharon. Oh, thank you. People are like, what sells? What should I be sourcing? I have a group for newer eBay sellers, eBay Selling Basics on Facebook. And very often that's the big question that'll come in. And I understand that. That was my big question when I first started selling. What do I sell? So absolutely, when you first start selling, is sell what's on hand. I'm a big advocate of that. Don't go out sourcing a bunch of things. Don't go out shopping. Really start to sell what's on hand. Also, for my more experienced sellers, again, sometimes too, when our sales might be a little stagnant or a little bit of slow and we get really frustrated, is that your cash flow might slow down a little bit. It's the perfect time to do a circle around your home, also around your yard, because don't forget that the outside items sell too, and look for items to resell on eBay, because that's a big help for you. But this is the number one tip I really see people not sharing, which is grow where you're planted. So people come in and they ask for tips, what sells, what should be on a lookout for, where should I be sourcing? And my answer is grow where you're planted. You have access to places to source that I don't have access to. And when I listen to experts giving out tips, and I listen to people that are wonderful sellers giving out tips, what they're sharing, which is absolutely right, is what is working for them. So they're sharing that their local thrift shops are really good. Maybe they have really good Goodwill, Salvation Army, Savers near them. Other people source with what is called retail arbitrage. They have really huge range of retail stores near them. And what they're doing is they're really good at going in and waiting for sales and using coupons. I remember seeing a seller that was like killing it at Kohl's. Just really huge discounts using coupons, literally getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars of great inventory for very low cost, because this seller was very patient and waiting for killer sales and then going in with coupons. So my first tip to you is grow where you're planted. It's wonderful to listen to a seller that, let's say is selling beautiful vintage glass and is really killing it on eBay selling vintage glass. But in my area, when I look at yard sales, when I look at consignment shops, when I look around, there isn't any. It's like, it's great that they're getting a lot of vintage glass, but I'm not. So just realize oftentimes availability is regional. It depends what the people in that area are donating. Some areas are really good at vintage glass. Other areas might be really good at video games, high-end clothing. I learned this a long time ago. If you're looking for high-end luxury goods, typically you want to go into more posh neighborhoods for sales consignment stores. Here in New York, this was a big thing years ago, was the consignment stores and the thrift stores on the Upper East Side. If you know New York City, the Upper East Side is Park Avenue, Lexington Avenue. You typically have more affluent people in that area, and they had thrift stores for various good causes. So like for the opera, music for the local school, that kind of thing. But I remember that the Opera Society had one on the Upper East Side, and it had the greatest stuff. It's on the Upper East Side. People that are opera buffs typically are higher income people. I don't want to get too vast with my generalizations, but typically opera goers are more affluent people. So that the designer stuff in the opera thrift store was really good. So that kind of thing is, think of who would be donating to this store and the location of the store. And sometimes, just to flip it around, because it's off the beaten track, because it's not like a main line, because it's not, let's just say, a Salvation Army, it's not a Goodwill, it might be a more local charity, let's say like for an animal shelter or something like that. But if it has very avid donors and people that are involved with that charity shop, they can have great stuff. So on your trips, you know, as you're going to the post office, as you're picking up your kids, as you're visiting friends, keep an eye out for stores all along the way. I had a really good thrift shop. Sadly, it closed in my neighborhood. It was tiny, 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 tiny thrift shop. I mean, really, really, really small. And a lot of their stuff was overpriced, really overpriced. But what was really interesting with this thrift shop was the stuff that was sort of off brand. So if it wasn't Coach, it wasn't Louis Vuitton, it wasn't Gucci, but still really good brands, they wouldn't recognize them, and you get it for really good prices. So that's another thing that a lot of times gurus don't talk about, is when you go in and you're looking at purses, or you're looking at wallets, or you're looking at clothing, or you're looking at home decor, typically the big brands are the known brands, the Michael Kors, the Kate Spade. You know, the stores know. They have the internet. They know what the prices are. And you'll see them be quite high. But lesser known brands that are really nice sellers, they won't be marked up at such a high price. And keep an eye out for them. So look at that brand where you go, oh, I haven't heard of that. You know, look at the emblem. A lot of times you can scan logos and get, and then just go on the internet and you'll see whole pages now of the logo, and you can figure out what it is. So consider that, but grow where you're planted. What's available to you? I remember one friend has these great church sales in her area, you know, where you get a brown bag full of tremendous product, you know, basically as much as you can shove in the bag, you get for just a couple of dollars. I wish there was things like that in New York. There isn't. But in that area, they have great brown bag sales. So for that seller, man, I would hit that church sale every time they have that church sale, because that's such a great deal. Even if there's only one or two things in the bag that you end up being able to flip for good money, it still pays for itself, like hands down. If you're shopping consignment and thrift stores, always keep an eye out if they have a sale day. Like there's a Salvation Army near me, and Wednesday is their sale day. So just know that, you know, that it's a good time to hit it on the sale day. Do you need to get there first thing in the morning? You know, if they have a good sale day. Same thing if you're looking at estate sales. Do they do any kind of heavy discounting the last day because they don't want to have to pack everything up? You know, always when you're going, if you're regular to the store, ask. The other thing with retail stores, if you're doing retail arbitrage and you start to like certain departments, so let's say you really like kids' clothing, you know, talk to the salespeople. When does the new inventory come in? What day do they typically do the markdown? Because if you're shopping markdowns like a Kohl's, Macy's does really good markdowns, is you always want to know, like, when do they go from 20 to 30, 30 to 40? Like, is it every week? Do they do it every 30 days? What is their typical sales cycle? So whatever your price break is that you're looking for, you know, you're looking for 50 off or 60 off or 70 off. I had a store closing near me. I was hoping they would go to 80, but they only went to 50 off. But I scooped up a lot of really good stuff when it was 50 off. And the way I knew, I went in when it was 20 off. I had spotted a couple of things, but it wasn't low enough to make good margins. And margin is how much you make after paying eBay and all your fees. So I talked to the associate. I'm like, are they going to mark this stuff down more? And she said, oh, yeah, next Friday, everything's going down half off. I was like, yay. And I was there first thing that Friday to scoop up my items. So always look at that. What stores are near you? What stores can you access? Do they have sale days? And then I have friends that source things like pallets. They're sourcing wholesale. Realize that when you're sourcing that way, you have to have enough space to take a pallet in, okay? And if you're not able to accommodate something like a lift gate, you're going to need to be ordering pallets where they deliver with a lift gate so you can take the inventory in, okay? So when you're buying wholesale, always find out what the minimum purchase order is, how much you're having to buy, and how they're going to deliver it. Also, what the delivery charges are. When you are sourcing wholesale, things can sound really great, but then you get hit with the delivery charges. Same thing if you're sourcing some things from thrift stores and consignment stores and you need to have it delivered. I've had this happen a couple times when people buy furniture. Just realize that if you can't put it in the back of your truck or your car, just think about what the delivery fees are going to be. And that's another thing when you're sourcing. Some items can look great and it might have a killer margin. Always consider where you're going to store it. Like, do you have the space to store this? How long you're going to have to hang on to it. It's great if it has 50–60% margins, but am I going to have to house this item for a year and a half, 2 years, or is this something that's going to move quickly? So grow where I'm planted. What stores are near me? And this is thrift stores, consignment stores, but also think drug stores, retail stores, outlet stores, estate sales. What is near me that I can source? Again, it's great to listen to a lot of people giving wonderful tips, but if I don't have stores like that, which I used to get really frustrated, I'm like, no. But to look at what stores are near me. Like here in New York City, there's an abundance of retail. So what stores are near me? And then what is their markdown cycle? Okay, 20, 30, 40, 50 off. Do they have coupons? Is there any kind of incentive? Any kind of bundling? Can I become a preferred customer? If you are a veteran, some stores have veteran discounts, military discount, senior discount. And what is a senior to them? Okay, so always take a look at that. So when listening to gurus, which is great, is do I have access to that? It's wonderful to learn about various categories like beautiful vintage glass, but if I don't have access to it, it's not helping me. So what do you have access to? Is it clothing? Is it home decor? Is it kids' toys? Is it video games? Is it electronics? What can I get my hands on? And look at the stores that are near you. Again, it's great to do these trips and to drive 2 and 3 hours, but I think it's always good to keep an eye on how much time this is taking. Now, if I have a killer store that's a 2-hour drive and I consistently get great margins, so it's absolutely worth a drive, let's say once a week or every couple of weeks to this place, you know, with my SUV or my truck or whatever, absolutely. But I think it's particularly at the beginning is start with ones that are nearby because I'm learning. And also the thing is, if you hit it, if you discover like, wow, this store gets great, I'm going to think it's like, because we're going into spring, summer season here in the United States, is they have great, let's say wind chimes. I remember one seller friend of mine was killing it with wind chimes, which is something I never would have thought of. Do I have access to wind chimes? Is there a Home Depot, Lowe's, or a Home and Garden? Like here in New York City, there's some local Home and Garden stores. Is there a non-chain Home and Garden that has great wind chimes? Test them, you know, maybe buy 10 or 20 or whatever amount I need to buy. Test it. Do they sell? If they do, run right back. And I literally, as soon as I sell one, I'm like running right back and getting more because they can sell out like that. But if possible, when you're testing an inventory, like you find out, you know, this one has great dolls or great puzzles, you know, can you buy some with potentially, you know, missing out on some sales because you're not buying all of them? Test and make sure it sells. Test and see how long you have to hold on to it, because that's another thing. People will share things that have great margins, but you have to hold on to it for a year, year and a half, 2 years. There's nothing wrong with that business model. It's a great business model. But realize that your money is going to be tied up for a year, year and a half, 2 years. So you have to have enough things that are selling steadily, or to include maybe some lower ticket items or lower margin items that are going to sell steadily, okay? And make sure that you're supplying that, you know, that you're able to get like puzzles. Puzzles typically right now are selling pretty well. You know, maybe I'm not making killer margins on the puzzle. I'm only making $5 or $10 on the puzzle, but every puzzle I'm sourcing I'm able to flip pretty fast. Same thing, kitchen utensils are doing quite well now. Appliances, pots and pans, you know, knives, all kinds of stuff around the home. Outdoor decor will really start flying out the door because we're going into barbecue season. So always look at, again, we love hearing from everybody. We love getting great ideas, but as you're listening, can I source anything like that? Do the stores in my area, again, without doing like a 10-hour round trip, unless I have a friend there I want to go visit. Can I source this kind of thing? Like for me, vintage cut glass is very difficult to source. I think probably because all the antique dealers are out looking in the same stores that I'm in here in the city. So just look at what can I source. And I like to get off the beaten trail too. Like if everybody's going in one direction with designer stuff, is there like a subcategory? Is there a brand? Is there somebody that not everybody's onto that I can source and make really good money? So that's what I want to say. Grow where you're planted and keep an eye on what stores, outlets, chains, retail, and I mean everything, hardware, outdoors, camping. Don't remember, I mean, everything sells on eBay, okay? So motorcycle parts, automotive accessories, all of this sells. What do you have access to? What can you get your hands on that's going to make you good money? And then sourcing that. Again, it's wonderful to hear things, and some things are just very pretty. They're just fun to look at. But what can I realistically source? And then really focus on that, learning that, sourcing that, listing that, selling that. Okay? Now, one thing that sells really well, if you know how to do it, I'm going to show you how to do it, and that are pretty easy to source all around the United States and actually around the world, but particularly in the United States, is sewing patterns. You can get sewing patterns at thrift stores, consignment stores, and I actually started selling them because I hit a mother load in a thrift store a couple years back and absolutely got a crash course in everything sewing patterns. But you will literally find them everywhere. So craft stores, yard sales, church sales, thrift store, consignment store. Also buying online, and I've done this a couple of times, is keep an eye out for lots and buy them and flip them. I've done a guide. It's on a flash sale on my website, ilovetobeselling.com, and it's called Sewing Patterns Can Make You Money. I wrote this guide after I scored my mother load with seamstress. Must have been a seamstress for like a small theater company, literally dumped like 60 patterns at a local thrift store. And I was just looking at, wow, this looks interesting. And I looked it up and I was like, whoa, I was like, I can make some serious money with this. And I literally just looked at a couple of them and I just didn't have time to go through every single one, but the price was low enough. I think I paid like $1 or $2 for each pattern. And these were patterns that were flipping for $20, $30. I just grabbed the whole stack. And in listing them, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what sells and what doesn't sell. And I learned a lot about creating sewing pattern listings, because a lot of people, when they put them up, they are missing key data that will get them sales. There's certain kinds of patterns that are better off to put in lots, and there's other patterns that are much better to sell by themselves. But anyway, I put it all in. It's on a flash sale. Grab it. It's a great price on my website, ilovetobeselling.com. And a portion of the proceeds are going to go to Lori Wong's Reflections of Trinity. She has a wonderful food pantry in the Atlanta area. So a portion of the proceeds from Sewing Patterns Can Make You Money will go to Lori's food pantry. But grab this, because sewing patterns, no matter where you are in the United States, and even if you, I'm always getting questions on this, like, should I buy these? Should I not buy these? What should I do with these? Grab the guide. It explains everything. It literally, I also outline seasons. There's different seasons that can really get hot with sewing patterns. And sewing patterns are not just clothing, just to give you a heads up. There's a lot of great crafts sewing patterns. And right now, crafts is a really, really hot category online. So grab that, enjoy it, and get busy selling. The big thing with sewing patterns, too, is they can be a very nice, steady money maker. So if you've got some of those items that are typically more long tail, that can take a little while to sell, which is great. The great thing with sewing patterns is they consistently sell. They sell 365 days a year. So grab the guide, and I'm Kathy, and I love to be selling. Bye-bye, everybody.